going in, you had a vision of what you were going to do. Premium fees, exceptional work. Mm-hmm. So I know the answer to this. You leave the DA's office to start your firm. You don't have any clients that are coming with you on day one. So what did you do to go get clients?
So I was sitting in my office. I think I was like about a week in. And of course, there's no calls. I'm like, okay, well, just, they'll come. I'm pretty confident, God has a way of making things happen. So I was sitting in my office. I get a phone call, and it's this lady who's looking for a criminal defense attorney. And she had found me through the bar website as a criminal law board certified specialist. And the California bar maintains a list of all the attorneys that are certified in the field of criminal law. And she was smart enough to go find somebody who's board certified, which is akin to being a board certified doctor, I guess, for lawyers in California. And so she called me. She said, she's looking to hire somebody really urgently for a domestic violence case. And we spoke, and she's like, I really want to meet you. And so she and her husband, she was my first client. They came in, and I was like, this is a really good sign. And then it just took off from there. Got a lot of referrals from colleagues, from the state bar. And of course, I joined Ben Glass's. Brian and Ben have been really instrumental in helping set the foundation for the firm the right way, doing the marketing the right way. And, we just took off running.
Welcome to the Founding Partner Podcast. Join your host, Jonathan Hawkins, as we explore the fascinating stories of successful law firm founders. We'll uncover their beginnings, triumph over challenges, and practice growth. Whether you aspire to launch your own firm, have an entrepreneurial spirit, or are just curious about the legal business, you're in the right place. Let's dive in.
Welcome to Founding Partner Podcast. I'm your host, Jonathan Hawkins. This is a podcast where I get to interview founding attorneys, hear about their journeys, and hopefully they can tell me all the things I'm doing wrong so I can do better in my firm. So I'm glad to welcome to this episode Nana Knight. She is a criminal defense lawyer in San Jose, California, and she's got a really cool firm name with Knight Justice. I love that. So Nana, welcome to the podcast.
Thanks, Jonathan. Thanks for having me.
So why don't you lay out, give a brief description of your firm. So, how many people are there? How many lawyers? Are you virtual, hybrid? Sort of a high level overview of the setup of your firm.
Criminal defense firm. We're based in San Jose, California. We've got 2 attorneys, my law partner, who also happens to be my husband, Chris Knight. So we're the only attorneys in the firm. We're in the process of hiring a 3rd attorney. We got 3 support staff, a paralegal. We just hired another paralegal, and we have somebody working for us part-time. So we have a physical office. With a criminal defense firm, we tend to meet with our clients not in our house. And Chris is semi-virtual, using the office as needed. We're very flexible.
So we're going to get into your background and all that, but your firm, it's not that old, right? You started it really maybe less than 2 years ago or 2 years ago?
It's a young firm. I launched it in 2024, January of 2024. And yeah, we just hit our 2-year mark this year.
Congrats. But you've had a lot of growth.
You.
It sounds like you're already hiring more people, so that's cool. So I want to get into that, but before we do, let's back up a little bit. Before you started your firm, you started out, and correct me, everywhere I'm wrong, you just correct me, but I think you started out your legal career as a JAG lawyer. Is that correct?
I was a JAG lawyer on active duty in the Air Force, started out prosecuting cases. The first month I was activated as a JAG, I got my first big sexual assault case, and it's like baptism by fire. Just go figure it out. We'll help you, but you own it. And that's really shaped how I approach my cases, my work ethic, and it's how we run our firm.
So what led you to go the JAG route versus something else?
So it's not a dramatic story. Chris was a cadet serving in the Army in law school at UC Berkeley. And when I met him, he was gearing up to go to the JAG Corps in the Army. And he said, look, this is a good, you should consider doing this, because if we end up getting married, we're going to be, traveling or PCSing, as we call it, permanent change of station, every couple of years. You can't take the bar at every jurisdiction. And I looked into all the branches. I really liked the mission of the Air Force. I love airplanes. I love the mission. I said, this is the only branch I'm going to apply to. Unfortunately, I got selected, and it was one of the best decisions I've ever made in my life.
Well, that's cool. I want to get to that. So my nephew is about to graduate from the Air Force Academy here in a few months.
Very cool.
I think he's
That's
ready
awesome.
to get out.
Yeah, I was actually stationed at the Air Force Academy. I was the Chief of Military Justice, advising the 3-star general who's the superintendent. So I'm very familiar with the cadet life.
So tell me, you mentioned you just started and they said, here, go try this case. So how was it? So you graduate law school, you apply, you get accepted, you show up, and sort of how is it? How do you get sort of implemented or integrated into the service or into the office or however you do it? Yeah.
Yeah, so I came in with a professional degree, obviously as an officer, first lieutenant, and then 6 months later, unless you do something really bad, it's an automatic promotion to captain. But I did go through the officer training school in Montgomery, Alabama. I've spent a long time in Alabama going through the officer training. And then I got sent to McCord Air Force Base in the state of Washington. And then I went back for what we call JSOC, the JAG Staff Officer School. It's kind of like law school mini where they train JAGs on military law. So I went back to Alabama for that.
So I grew up in Alabama.
You did?
I've spent a lot of time in Alabama too. And I've been to that Air Force Base out of Montgomery.
Maxwell. Yeah.
I had to go take a deposition of somebody in there one time. And
Okay.
I remember, so the prison camp, I'll call it, in the back, which is where I had to go. And there's no fences, there's no barbed wire, there's just like the signs that just say, don't go beyond this point. And right across the street, there's this golf course.
Yep.
I thought that was like hilarious, but torture too.
Yep.
You got these white collar criminals in there, and then everybody's playing golf right in front of them. But yeah, so yeah, that's cool. All right, so you go in there, and then you're immediately trying cases.
Yeah, first case was a sexual assault case, pretty serious charges, and I just learned to figure things out. I had a lot of assistance with the more senior JAGs who guided me through the process, but I was the trial attorney, and it was my case, and I owned it, and we got a great result. My very first court-martial, so I'll always remember that case.
So your first chair, you don't have anybody there with you?
You get a second chair. You get a senior JAG who comes in for the actual trial, but everything has to be prepared. All the witnesses have to be prepared. The opening statement, all the direct cross-examination, all that stuff has to be done. And the senior JAG just comes in. They technically first chair, and they're there just in case something goes awry. But it was my case to build up and work up and investigate and, get it ready for trial.
That's cool. Scary, but cool. And I'll say, nowadays, in most scenarios, lawyers just don't get to try cases like that. That's the old days, pretty much.
I have noticed that trend, yeah.
So how long were you active in the JAG?
I was on active duty for 4 years. Chris and I served together. We got co-located. He stayed obviously with the Army, so they were really nice to co-locate us together at McCord at Fort Lewis. And then we went to Colorado Springs. I was at the Air Force Academy. Chris was at Fort Carson. And so we did 4 years active duty. We finished out our initial commitment, got out, and became deputy district attorneys working together in the same office. Parallel careers.
So before we leave the JAG, how many cases have you counted up? How many cases you got to try?
I had a few, definitely over 10 felony cases, and I did switch assignments. So the JAG Corps really tries to expose you to different areas of the law. I was the chief of operations law. I was chief of adverse actions. I did civil law. So you kind of rotate. And when I got out, I was the chief of military justice at the Air Force Academy, overseeing all the investigations and all the courts martial, advising commanders on UCMJ matters. So
that's cool. So you leave that, and then you go to DA's office. Is this in San Jose or somewhere else?
This was in Fresno, actually. We settled in Fresno, kind of a halfway point between the Bay Area and LA, which is where Chris and I are from, originally from Los Angeles. And so our kids were born in Clovis, very close to Fresno, and we were DAs there. We went up really fast in terms of the assignments and the promotions, and I was on the domestic violence team doing trials, and I really got to learn that area of the law really well. I really liked it.
And so I guess at some point you decided, I want to try private practice. Take me through the evolution there.
Yeah, so I was a DA in Fresno, and then we moved to Monterey County, nicer weather, just beautiful. And I was doing gang crimes, violent shootings, assaults, and homicide cases. And I realized, this is great. I love criminal law, but can I monetize my skills where, I could test my entrepreneurship and, see if I could put all the leadership skills, all the management skills that the military has taught me and use it for my firm and see what happens there. And I knew I would be successful. So I was pretty confident. I don't know why, but I was. And I was like, you know what? I'm just going to do this. And if it doesn't work out, I can always go back and, get a government job. But I haven't looked back. It was actually not that difficult for me. It was a big risk because, you become reliant on your stable paycheck every month. So not having that was a little unnerving. But once you have the confidence to kind of go out on your own and not be afraid, I think it pays off.
So you had this desire, you wanted to try it out. Some people have that, but they never do anything about it. Some people say, okay, I'm going to do it, but just not yet. And they're just waiting for, quote unquote, the right time. Did you have any issues with that? Or did you decide and you're like, we're doing it, I'm going, boom? Or take me through that a little bit.
Yeah, so the idea popped into my head. I'm like, I'm looking at all these defense attorneys. They're charging $20, $30, $40, $50,000 for a case. That's the same case that I'm working on, and they get to run their own firm. They get to pick their own cases. They get to create something that they can feel proud of. And I was like, why can't I do this myself? And so the idea popped in my head and I thought about it and I talked to, of course, Chris. I'm like, I really want to do this. And he was extremely supportive. He's like, go ahead. And so I was very confident going into it. Initially, I even, thought to myself, my business model is going to be, I'm going to charge premium fees, but I'm going to provide exceptional service. And that's kind of guided me throughout this whole process of building my business and my firm. And that's kind of been the overall, framework.
Well, I like that. Going in, you had a vision of what you were going to do. Premium fees, exceptional work. Mm-hmm. So I know the answer to this. You leave the DA's office to start your firm. You don't have any clients that are coming with you on day one. So what did you do to go get clients?
So I was sitting in my office. I think I was about a week in. And of course, there's no calls. I'm like, okay, well, just, they'll come. I'm pretty confident, God has a way of making things happen. So I was sitting in my office. I get a phone call, and it's this lady who's looking for a criminal defense attorney. And she had found me through the bar website as a criminal law board certified specialist. And the California bar maintains a list of all the attorneys that are certified in the field of criminal law. And she was smart enough to go find somebody who's board certified, which is akin to being a board certified doctor, I guess, for lawyers in California. And so she called me. She said, she's looking to hire somebody really urgently for a domestic violence case. And we spoke, and she's like, I really want to meet you. And so she and her husband, she was my first client. They came in, and I was like, this is a really good sign. And then it just took off from there. Got a lot of referrals from colleagues, from the state bar. And of course, I joined Ben Glass's. Brian and Ben have been really instrumental in helping set the foundation for the firm the right way, doing the marketing the right way. And, we just took off running.
I love that story. I'm curious. She looked at the list. You're not the only board certified criminal lawyer. So why did she choose you? Do you even know?
I think it was my last name.
Really?
She even said that. She's like, I found your name. Knight is such a good, I think she said it's such a regal name. I really like that last name. And then, when she spoke with me, she learned about my prosecutorial experience and the fact that I was a DV prosecutor. She's like, this is perfect. So
That's cool. So you mentioned Ben and all the marketing things you learned. Before you came across Ben, had you been experimenting with marketing efforts? And what were those?
So I signed up with Ben simultaneously when I was opening up my firm. And I'm not the typical type of lawyer that I think Ben and Brian are looking for, somebody who's just starting out. And Brian even asked me, he's like, we're not here to help you set up your firm and teach you the basics. And I said, I understand, I can handle that. I just need to learn how to set up the culture in my firm, marketing, and all just the foundational aspects of the firm the right way. So that way I'm not going back and, fixing errors. And it's the best decision I made, starting out, but it worked out really well. So I've learned a ton from GLM, and I've implemented a lot of the things that they've taught me. And that's why I feel like we're, 2 years in, we've hired so many people, and Chris was able to quit his DA job and join me as a full-fledged partner in the firm.
So let's talk about that. I'm going to circle back to the marketing, but let's talk about that. When did Chris come on board?
He joined me in August of last year.
And so I guess you had so much work, you're finally like, look, you got to leave, or had he been chomping at the bit to join you?
He saw, of course he's supporting me behind the scenes, which I'm, always be grateful for him for supporting me. But he saw how much creativity and fun I was having building something that was my own. And, there came a point where I was like, Chris, I can't handle all these cases. You got to help me out. And he took the risk of quitting his, 6-figure salary job with the Santa Clara District Attorney's Office to join me. And for some reason, the caseload just, I feel like doubled or even tripled after he joined. And we were concerned initially, it's like, are we going to have enough cases? We're 2 attorneys. Our livelihood depends on this business now. But we were fortunate enough that cases just kept coming, very well qualified clients. And I'm just hoping this doesn't stop.
It's funny how that happens. It happens a lot. It's happened to me. You can call it what you want, but it's amazing. I say that when you ask the universe, it usually listens, and it starts sending you stuff.
Yeah, definitely.
So now that your husband's with you, how do you guys split responsibility for the firm stuff? Because you've got obviously casework, client work, you've got intake, operations, you got market, all the stuff. How do you divide those responsibilities?
So Chris and I work really well together. We have very different styles, but the work ethic is the same. Chris was on the sexual assault team at Santa Clara DA's office, so he gets the sex cases just because he's just, that's his area. And I've done a lot of sex cases too, but he's the perfect person to handle those. But it's whoever is the right fit for the client in terms of personality. Sometimes clients want to work with me specifically. They ask for me by name, and sometimes they don't care. I think they really like the husband and wife dynamic. They like the fact that they get 2 lawyers to strategize and, help them with their case. So it's based on availability in a way, but I'm the one who's kind of like the face of the firm. I handle all the marketing. Chris is kind of more behind the scenes, and that's what he prefers to be, behind the scenes. I love the marketing. He doesn't like marketing as much as I do.
It's fun. I love it too.
I love it too.
Well, let's go back. Okay, so you joined GLM, and I'm in there too, and they have sort of a program. They have some things I call them sort of their foundational, the cornerstone stuff. We can get into some of that too. But with marketing, there's so many things you can do. I mean, there's so many things you can do, and I know a lot of lawyers, especially when they're first starting out, like you were, you get overwhelmed. You're like, there's 100 things I can do, and you see these other lawyers that are doing all these things. You're like, I got to do them all, but you can't. So how did you start to attack your list of items? What did you do first, and then what did you do second? I'm curious how you stacked it.
Yeah, so the very first thing I did when I first started the firm is I created my Google business profile, and I started getting reviews from people who know me, who know my work. And that got me on Google's radar, and people started calling me, finding me through Google, and they still do. A lot of our clients find us online. And from there, started doing other digital marketing stuff, SEO for my website. And then I started doing videos, working with Authority Brand. We put out these educational, entertaining videos on various criminal defense topics. The most recent thing that I did was newsletters with Kia Arian. And I love writing. I love that newsletter project. And then the YouTube channel is probably the most exciting thing that I've done.
I do want to talk about YouTube, but
Yeah.
we're not going to go there first. So I want to go back to the SEO. There's a lot of people out there selling SEO. You do it yourself. There's all these ways to go about it. How did you do that? Did you start doing it yourself, or did you hire somebody? How did you know who to hire?
So, one of the great things about GLM is that they have vendors that they recommend. And I reached out to Ben and Brian, and they recommended this company that I work with, Nifty. And they've been pretty good. I've been very happy with them. Of course, my strategy is not to rely on one source of, one lead source, and just diversify as much as I can. And right now I'm focused on community outreach for this year.
Yeah, that's another thing that I personally have experienced. Everybody that's done this for a while experience it. It's when you start to stack these things, it's not, at least in my experience, it's not a 1 + 1 = 2. It's usually a 1 + 1 = 2.5, and then you add a third, and then it equals 4. It's just sort of this multiplier effect because everything starts working with each other. And so maybe that's a good segue into the YouTube videos, because those also have a lot of SEO juice. I mean, everybody says YouTube's the second most searched website in the world. How did you go down the path of videos? Because I know, myself speaking, there's a lot of inertia, at least with me, to get over the hump, because I'm like, I need to do video, but I just never do it. So what pushed you to actually get going? And I did watch some of your videos, and they're quite good. You're good at it.
Thank you.
How did you learn how to do it? Yeah.
There's I think, natural discomfort when you first start out to be in front of the camera and to, stare at the camera. There's no one there. You're just talking directly to the camera. So I had to overcome that. I'm still learning in it and trying to improve the presentation. But I wanted to do YouTube when I first started my business. I thought that that's kind of like a area that's ripe for, leverage for attorneys. And I'm currently working with Jeff Hampton with YouTube Rainmakers, and he has this great, service, and I've consulted with him. He's kind of shown me the ins and outs of YouTube, marketing. So very instrumental in helping me launch the channel, and we're pretty consistent in putting out video.
So the videos you put out, what's the length, sort of the average length?
So I try to make it 10 minutes at least, depending on the script. The ideal time is 15 to 20 minutes, but sometimes you can't really make it at that length when you're actually videotaping. But that's the preferred to the audience engagement, and always just kind of creating curiosity throughout the video to keep the audience engaged and the retention rate high. So
how long have you been doing the videos at this point?
I think we started in April of last year.
So
That's
not
when
even
we
a year
started.
yet. So as you look back at your April videos from now, can you see the improvement? Can you see?
I want to say yes. I definitely see I'm a little more comfortable in front of the camera versus the first time I did my first video. I can definitely see a difference in my, comfort levels, and you just kind of improve from there, and you get more comfortable. You just have to be consistent. And it is a lot of work. Scripting, getting the equipment set up, the lighting is really important. So like you, for a long time, I wanted to do it, but it was just too difficult to get all that stuff, all the logistics in place.
So this may be a hard question, but I'm really curious about it. As you look over the last, 10 months or so now that you've been doing the videos, I'm sure you're tracking the metrics and you're seeing the stats and all these things. Do you see a very clear increase the longer that you've had, I guess, the more you stack in your video on your channel, do you see the consistent growth? Or is it jumps and starts? I'm curious how that, like if I was going to start building one now, I'm trying to set my expectations. And, you know, a lot of people will start a project and then give up before it's really working. And I'm trying to figure out how long does it really take before you really start to say, okay, yeah, this is working.
I would say give it at least 9 months, but be consistent with releasing at least one video per week and make sure, you know, there's a technique to this. You definitely want to describe the video and use all the SEO keywords within the description of the topic you're covering in your video, because that really reinforces the SEO. And I feel like we've had a surge in potential new clients finding us through Google because of my videos.
Okay, so the next question here is, you're doing all this marketing, it's clearly working. How do you balance getting the client work done with doing all the other stuff?
That's always the challenge, right? I think time management is really critical. We run our firm like a military operation, using all the tools that we've learned in the military, time management, delegation. You know, we want to be very surgical with our time and the things that we do as lawyers. So our paralegal handles a lot of the work before it gets to us, and she does all the work that we only come in. Chris and I only work on the case when there's a lawyer that's needed to get the product out the door. So she handles the preparation, the drafting of the initial, motion. So it's really, really helpful. We're very surgical. We just come in and we give it a review, we change things, and then we file the motion, for example. Of course, the paralegal is not going to be able to appear for you in court, and we do a lot of court appearances because we are criminal defense attorneys, and that's just the nature of our practice. So it's tough, but the time management skills that I've learned at GLM and combined with what the military has taught me, I think we're doing okay on that front. There's always room for improvement.
And so you do all this marketing, it's working, it's generating calls. How do you handle the intake? Do you have people that handle that, or do you do that? How do you handle that?
So we have an intake person, a dedicated full-time, and she's virtual, based in the Philippines, and she's handling the intake with a script, with training, and that's the person that we're using. And we're also using Smith AI as a backup, as an overflow, and Smith has been great, and we get notifications. Chris and I do the sales with the client after they've had an opportunity to talk to the intake person. For viable PNCs, we're the ones actually closing the sale.
And so with the YouTube videos, those go everywhere in the world. So do you get calls from outside your area, and how do you handle those?
Yes, we do. We get very interesting legal issues that have nothing to do with criminal law from many other states in the country. Funny story, we just had this young man who drove all the way from Napa, who had seen one of my videos on TikTok, and he came looking for me without calling, without an appointment. So that was interesting to tell him, that we can't help him with his legal issue, and appointments are required to speak with the attorney in person. But yes, it's quite entertaining sometimes with some of the legal issues that we see from people calling us.
So you mentioned TikTok. So what socials are you on other than TikTok?
So we do Instagram, working with Authority Brand, Facebook, or Meta. We definitely TikTok and YouTube Shorts. Those are huge. YouTube Shorts, Facebook, I think that's it. And LinkedIn, of course. LinkedIn, I put out the videos on LinkedIn as well.
All right, for the YouTube Shorts, do you need to go in there and embed certain text for SEO purposes, or do you just post the videos?
I think it's, I don't do the text for the shorts, and maybe that's something I should look into, but I know we definitely do SEO optimized descriptions for the longer videos. I'm not so sure about the shorts. I don't think we do those for the shorts.
Okay, I'm curious because I have started posting a lot of shorts from these podcasts, and I do no SEO text, none of that. So I'm curious if I need to start doing that, but maybe we both do. Yeah. So for others, including me, who are thinking about the YouTube, do you have any advice on, getting started, going down that path?
People say just get started, but it's not that easy. Okay, you have to have the right equipment. I'm not saying go invest in like the most expensive equipment. You need definitely good lighting, right? And can you use your iPhone? Yes. I have a camera. I prefer to use a camera, a professional camera in my studio. But you have to have a plan in place. And I think the starting point is analyzing what kind of cases you want to get more of and writing scripts along those topics and those clients that you want to obtain. And that takes some thought and some effort. So you can't just get started. You have to have a plan. So that would be my advice to somebody who's trying to, thinking about venturing into this area.
Real quick, if you haven't gotten a copy yet, please check out my book, The Law Firm Life Cycle. It's written for law firm owners and those who plan to be owners. In the book, I discuss various issues that come up as a law firm progresses through the stages of its growth, from just before starting a firm to when it comes to an end. The Law Firm Life Cycle is available on Amazon. Now back to the show. Well, the other thing that's striking about, as I listen to you talk, number one, you had a plan on the marketing. You went in, I'm going to attack this. But not only that, you hired experts to help you, probably accelerated all of it by hiring people instead of you trying to fumble around figuring these things out, which I think is huge. Not everybody has maybe the cash to do that. So do you have any advice for people out there, sort of the balance of do it yourself, try to figure it out, or go hire the expert, or how do you figure out when it's time to hire the expert?
I think just focusing on one marketing, if you want to try one marketing strategy, go in on that. And for me, I would prefer to pay somebody who does this and does it well versus trying to figure this out on my own, because my time is extremely valuable and I can spend that, getting new clients and servicing my clients, the production aspect of things. But it's about investment and investing your business funds in the right way, but focus on one thing at a time. If you try to do everything at the same time, I think that could backfire.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. So we've mentioned a lot of the things you're doing, but I think you're about to come out with or just came out with a book.
Yes, I did come out with a book, The Night Advantage, a practical guide to domestic violence charges. A big number of our cases involve domestic violence here in the Silicon Valley. And this book is written for folks who are caught up in the criminal justice system for the first time of their lives. And it gives them an opportunity, of course, if they work with the lawyer and come to us on time, to possibly get their case not filed. So that's one thing that we do really well when we intervene early on when a person has been arrested or is under investigation. This book I actually talk about it in the book, about how we can potentially prevent charges from not being filed. And we've had great success with that.
So how are you going to get the book distributed? What's sort of the plan? Somebody calls in or they see it on the internet? How do you get it in their hands?
So we're still trying to figure out how to maximize the value out of this book. We definitely give it to our clients who sign up with us and potential new leads who call us. I have the book on digits as well as in hard copy form. The consults that we do, they always get a copy of the book. And then for people that we talk on the phone, they, with our lead nurturing system, they get a copy, the digital version of the book. It helps build authority. It helps us stand apart from the rest of the criminal defense attorneys in the area. But there's a lot more ways to leverage the book, which I'm looking into, including maybe posting excerpts on my website, not necessarily as a landing page, but as a lead generation, lead magnet sort of asset.
Yeah. I just came out with my book in October, and it's I think it's great. I don't think there's been enough time yet for me to say, oh, it's, sunshine and rainbows and all this magic has happened. But I do think that it helps for sure. No one's called me and said, I got your book, I got to hire you. Although I've heard those stories from other lawyers. So they said they hired me because they had my book. I haven't had that yet. I'm hopeful that it'll happen at some point. But
no, your book is great. I remember the presentation at the GLM conference last year, and I'm very excited to see all the benefits you're going to get out of this book. It's great. And you work with Mike, right? Mike DeLon?
Yep.
Yeah, he's great.
That's the other thing, hire the experts. So it's, I had pushed around, I had this idea, and I had, I'd spend a couple weeks, I'd get the outline, and then maybe I'd start a chapter, working some stories, and then I would get busy, and it'd never get done. And then finally I said, all right, I need to get somebody that'll help me get this thing done. So, and it got done. So,
Yeah, no, it's great. Great book.
yeah. So you mentioned a minute ago that, did you say you have hired, or you're about to hire, or you're thinking about hiring another attorney?
We're writing the job description for this attorney right now and figuring out the benefits and the salary package. And we're going to start actively recruiting and hoping we can get somebody who likes our firm, likes our values, who's a good fit. We're very particular in the way we run our firm. And so I'm really hoping we can find somebody who's compatible.
So when you served as a JAG, I assume you managed a lot of attorneys and a lot of people.
I did, yes.
So you know how to do it. So that's good.
It's helpful.
Did the military train you and teach you these things, or did you just sort of have to learn it on your own within?
Well, yeah, the military, you get world-class training on leadership. And I feel like there's a distinction between management and leadership. So they really teach you management skills as well. So it's a combination of leadership, management, and yes, you are in charge of enlisted, in the JAG Corps paralegals that you're supervising and delegating and making sure they are doing their job. Ultimately, you're responsible for the work product. But having that experience really helps me run my firm in the management of my personnel. And I feel like, it's not going to be as difficult to manage another attorney because of those skills. Of course, the personality is a big factor, but you want somebody who, that's why I think it's important for somebody to understand and appreciate and accept our values, our mission, and how we handle our business in our firm.
So as you begin to add these other lawyers, where do you see your role headed? Where do you want it to go?
Ultimately, the ideal state for me is getting to a place where the firm doesn't need me, where the firm runs itself, right? And so how do we get to that? That's like the ideal state. There's things you do, and I think it's scaling up the right way, the right investment in the firm, hiring the right people, the right culture. So all those things kind of play into that. But that's my ultimate goal. What I would love to do is just be the face of the firm, do the community outreach, bring in the business, be the moneymaker for the business, and have the attorneys, manage their cases, oversee them, strategize, because I love trial work, I love criminal law, so I don't ever see myself not practicing law, but it would be nice to kind of be the overseer versus the boots on the ground. I have to go to court tomorrow, that type of, battle rhythm, I would say.
I will say it's hard to run a firm day to day and really take the time to grow a firm when you're having to get called into court all the time. It's just really hard.
It is. It is challenging, yes.
So I know that feeling. So give me a sense too. So California, huge, biggest state, lots of people, lots of crime, I'm sure. And I don't know about San Jose. I'm trying to get a sense for how big you think your firm can get within your sort of geography now, and is it something that long term maybe we need to expand geographically?
So Chris and I talk about this all the time. We don't see ourselves becoming a huge, firm, like a large firm, but maybe a medium-sized firm, I think, would be kind of the best way to envision based on what we've talked about. Maybe start out with 10 attorneys and see how that works, and run the firm with 10 attorneys and the appropriate support staff. And then if we need to get bigger, then we kind of look into that. But I feel like, again, going back to what Ben and Brian have been teaching, is you have to make your business suit your needs, not the other way around. You're not working, for your firm. You have to kind of design your life in a way where your business is serving your needs and your priorities. And so that's always kind of like the anchoring principle whenever Chris and I sit down to talk about how big are we going to grow? How are we going to get there? we're not in a rush to grow super, super big with like 10, 20, 30 attorneys. We're just going to take one step at a time and make the right decisions, not rush into it. But now we're at a point where, based on our case volume, we do need a third attorney. So maybe that turns into 4 next year. Who knows? So that's the excitement of building your own thing.
It is. It's really exciting. I was talking to somebody earlier this week, coincidentally, who's in California as well, and their problem's not getting the work, which it sounds like is not your problem either. At least you're getting plenty of work. Their problem has now turned into they can't find enough attorneys, and so that's sort of the constraint on the growth. And so it's always a balance, and it's, sounds to me you've sort of figured out how to get the clients. And so the next stage is going to be, all right, how do we get the right attorneys that fit in with, like you said, your culture, your vision, your mission, your values, all that stuff. So
it's a good problem to have.
Yeah,
right?
Exactly.
Not having so much work that you can't find attorneys for. But, I always think that it's better to take your time and not hire the very first person just to fill the need. You need to actually put in the time and the effort to get to know the person. And fortunately, I'm pretty intuitive. When I talk to the new hires, I can tell this person's going to work out or this person's not going to work out. Fortunately, we'll see.
Yeah. Well, I'm sure you'll figure it out. I mean, you figured out everything else. So
no, I don't want to say that, Jonathan.
Well, you're good at figuring out how to get the right people in place to. Anyway, yeah, you've done a good job.
Learn as you go.
You've done a really good job, I'll say that. For a young firm, you've done a lot, and you're doing a lot. So for others out there who might want to take sort of an accelerated path like you have, what sort of advice would you give them?
I feel like confidence is really key. If you're going to branch out on your own, I would recommend getting experience first, right? So working at a firm or getting some experience for criminal defense attorneys at the DA's office or the public defender's office, you have to have that experience. And then just being really confident, because if you're not confident, clients sense that and they're not going to pay you premium amounts, right? And you don't want to undersell yourself either, because then you're going to be constantly working for very cheap. And I don't know if that's such a great thing, for a person to be doing that. I think having the confidence, which I had because I had tried so many serious cases as a prosecutor, murders, violent gang shootings. So I was pretty confident in my skills, and I could quote a price with a straight face but also deliver. So, and that just kind of building on that confidence and getting all these wins, which increases your confidence as a defense attorney now. And then, really enjoying what you do. If you don't enjoy what you do, then you're not going to really be successful, in my opinion.
So let's talk about the confidence in the premium fees. There are attorneys out there. I'm curious what your experience has been, where you say, all right, my fee is $50,000 for this. And the client says, I can't afford it. Will you take 20? And the lawyer says, I need the money. Okay, yeah, I'll do it. Did you ever have those sorts of problems early on before you really had built up the client base?
I can't say that I didn't when I first started out, but I quickly decided that I don't want to negotiate. I just don't negotiate anymore, and I ask when potential new client calls, I'm talking to them, I'm like, okay, so what are you looking for? You asked about the prices. Are you looking for the cheapest attorney in town? Because you are probably going to find somebody who's cheaper. I'm very honest. And I always say, have you looked at our credentials? Have you seen our bios on our website? Well, if you haven't, I highly recommend you go and check it out so you can understand who you are talking to. I think that directness, that confidence, really believing in your own skill set and what you can offer to your clients, that comes through. And clients like that. They like that directness, I feel like, at least with me.
So some of the examples you just gave are like really sophisticated sales techniques. Did you learn that? Are those natural? Did you learn those somewhere?
No, I don't have any. I didn't really train to do sales. I'm just saying, and, in conversations, I'm bringing up points that just feel logical to me. And I think it all goes back to like really being confident in the services and your skill set that you're offering. The clients are getting a really good service, but I'm going to have to charge for my time and effort, And this is a business, it's not a nonprofit, right? And, people sometimes talk about, well, I like helping people. Yes, but you're also in a business, right? So charity starts at home. When I'm away from my kids, working on cases for other clients, I want to be well compensated because they're going to get really, good results, hopefully, based on the facts of their case, or the best outcome possible, I would say. But then, I want to also enjoy what I'm doing and create a win-win situation for the client and myself.
Yeah, I really like what you said. Now, if you want cheaper, there's cheaper out there. You should go somewhere else. I think that is key. And maybe sometimes people say, yeah. I can tell you from my experience, and I'm sure every lawyer out there listening that's had this happen will say, yeah. It's when somebody on the front end tries to negotiate you down, and it's always going to be a problem later, whether it's a bill later or a decision in the case, whatever it is, they're going to be second guessing you. There are signs early on, and sort of ask those questions and pose them. You screen them out, and if it's really important to them, they'll go somewhere else. So
I agree. Yeah, I definitely agree. I don't negotiate, and some attorneys are offended when clients start negotiating. I don't get offended. I just think we're not the right fit, and I tell the potential caller that. And a lot of times, they come back and they say, "Well, we want to go with you, even though you're not a cheap attorney. We want to go with you because we just feel confident in your ability to help us." So. But yeah, I agree. There's a technique to selling, but you have to stay true to your personality, I feel like, when you're talking to clients.
Yeah. So I get the sense that you are a natural entrepreneur. You have fallen into that, or you just have always had that, maybe. And that's sort of the question. Have you always had that? As a kid, did you know you were always going to do this?
No, I didn't. I actually never tested myself in the business arena ever because I was a public servant for most of my career. And so that was one of the things I said to myself when I was opening up my law or thinking about launching my own law firm. This is an untested area for me. I want to do this just to see if I could do well in it. And I think I have the foundation for it. And so turns out I really like it. I love the business aspect of it. So I don't know if I didn't get training. I don't have any formal business education, but I think it goes back to just your personality. If you're a self-starter, driven, ambitious, I think that combined with the effort that you put into your work, it pays off.
So we've talked a lot about all the good things that you've been doing and all the good things and the ways that the firm has grown, but have there been any challenges over the last couple of years in getting this thing off the ground?
So the challenge as always, and in the foreseeable future will be, how do I do all these things that I'm doing and do them well? Because I feel like if you're not careful, something is going to fall through the cracks, right? You're going to get an unhappy client. And so my biggest thing with my clients is being extremely responsive. That doesn't mean that I pick up the phone every time they call. In fact, I implemented the very first rule that I learned from Brian and Ben is, we're not taking any unscheduled phone calls from clients. We just don't. And so I value my time, and I am extremely responsive, and I teach my staff to be very responsive to clients so they're not wondering what's happening in their case with no updates. But that increases a little bit of the anxiety, making sure, you respond to them on time, making sure that all the deadlines and the timelines are followed. So that combined with all the marketing things that I'm doing, I'm wearing many different hats, right? So that's the challenge. And I think the solution to that is delegation, finding the right people to take things off your plate, delegating the right way, and making sure the work gets done, and having systems. And I think that's the key, the systems.
So I've talked to a lot of owners in growth mode, and they do delegate. They hire somebody, they delegate, then all of a sudden their plate's full again, and they never are not busy. There's always something else to do.
Never ending.
It never ends, which is, I sort of like it. I sort of like being busy. Some people don't. But how do you handle all the stuff coming at you? What sort of, do you exercise? What do you do to sort of relieve some of the stress that is just coming at you from clients, from the business, from your family, from all these things?
Yeah, I think definitely exercise, and I have to exercise as I'm still in the reserve, so I have to meet the physical requirements. It's part of the job description. Exercise really helps with mental clarity. It's not just a fitness thing, but it's also a mental thing, right? So, and then taking time away to think, some alone time, just to think about what my priorities are, to recalibrate myself and think about where I'm going, why I'm doing these things, just kind of like the more profound questions, and connecting all of that. And then, of course, the time management piece is a really important part of it, because I do have 2 young kids, and my job is to be a good mom, and that's my number one job, right? To be a present parent, a good mother for my kids. So they're my priority. And that comes with a lot of challenges, because I'm doing all these things, right? So I don't know how I do it sometimes, Jonathan. I really don't, because I also have the reserve duty.
Oh, yeah.
I'm still in the reserve, so I'm servicing and defending, senior military officers who are accused of misconduct as a JAG officer. So that's another part-time job that I have. So I'm doing a lot of things. There's this thing called eustress that we call in the military, this positive stress that you have that is kind of like driving you to perform. And I feel like when I don't have that little bit of stress, that's a good thing. I don't function as well. So I need to kind of always be in that eustress mode, fueling my performance and, having these goals. When I hit my goals, that makes me really happy.
Well, I can feel the energy. I can feel the excitement as you talk about these things. And I get it. I 100% get it. And it's, if it excites you, if you're having fun, do it. And in it, you clearly seem to be having fun, where you talk to some people and it's Sunday night and they don't even want to get up the next morning yet.
It's not like that right now.
Yeah. Well, cool. So we're coming sort of to the end here. And I've asked a little bit about this, but I do want to sort of wrap it up with, a lot of our listeners out here are looking to grow their firm, maybe start a firm. And do you have any pieces of advice for them as they sort of embark on this journey?
Yeah, definitely. My advice would be talk to people before you decide to go on your own. Get advice, different perspectives and viewpoints, and then you make, you make decisions about how much of that you want to implement. But if you're asking, that's such a broad question, right? For marketing, I feel like Google reviews are really important to start collecting right away, just to create that social proof that you are a successful attorney. And then just going out there and meeting attorneys and doing it the old-fashioned way, getting your business cards out, and then getting maybe being a speaker at events and community outreach. I feel like all of that is still very viable, and not many attorneys do that because they rely on digital marketing. So to a lawyer who's starting out, that's what I would recommend. And I'm also involved in Provisors, a professional networking group, and I've met a lot of, referral partners through that organization. Join organization, join the bar. The bar also sends referrals. So if you're thinking about doing it, have confidence and implement these things, and I think that could lead to some really good results.
Well, Nana, this has been great. I've enjoyed hearing all the things you're doing and how it's actually working. That's the other key. You do the stuff and it works, people. Just do the stuff. You just got to take action. So, Nana, thanks for coming on. For people out there that want to get in touch with you, maybe, ask you some questions offline or refer you a case or whatever, what's the best way to find you?
Yeah, so just our website has our contact information. Feel free to reach out. You can also find me on YouTube, and with our phone number, that's everywhere on the videos. I'm not really difficult to find, so.
All right. Well, thanks again. I appreciate it.
Thanks, Jonathan.
Thanks for listening to this episode of the Founding Partner Podcast. Be sure to subscribe on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts to stay up to date on the latest episodes. You can also connect with Jonathan on LinkedIn and check out the show notes. with links to resources mentioned throughout our discussion by visiting www.lawfirmgc.com. We'll see you next time for more origin stories and insights from successful law firm founders.